Welcome everyone to this tutorial for the Icon A5 Performance Edition with the Garmin G3X. So the new Garmin avionics make this Icon A5 a fully IFR capable aircraft, so let's take it for a flight. Starting the A5 and setting up a flight are fairly easy. Obviously to turn the aircraft on you just switch on the battery, you see this nice Garmin start screen here, and you'll see the new avionics that are running through a self-test. So the next thing to do is start the engines. Before we can do that, we've got to go up to the overhead panel, turn on the fuel pumps or the fuel valve, and just turn the key to start the aircraft. So with that done, we can now start looking at some of the flight planning stuff and getting the new autopilot set up. So if we go to flight plan, and we'll go into our active flight plan. So we can see here, and you can pan and zoom of map, which is pretty cool. You can see here we've got a flight from Swansea to Cardiff, the ILS for runway 30, and you can see our approach is already programmed in on the map. So we'll go back to the menu and we'll go back to the map. So now what we've got to do is set up the autopilot for our flight. So you click the autopilot panel, we'll turn on flight director, we'll turn on the nav, and we'll set our desired altitude, which is 3,000 feet, which we were assigned. And with that done, we can activate vertical speed and set our desired vertical speed. We're going to set that to about an 800 feet per minute climb. So with the autopilot set, there's now just one more thing we need to do before we can go flying. So we'll get rid of the autopilot panel, we'll click the HSI, the compass, and we'll set our nav source to FMS so it will follow our flight plan. Bring back the autopilot just so we're ready for our flight. On the runway there's not much more we need to do. We'll just switch on our strobe and nav lights, set our takeoff flaps of 15, and we're ready to go. We bring the throttles up to nearly full, and the plane starts to take off by itself fairly quickly. So we'll just rotate, and as soon as we have positive rate, the gear can come up and we will activate our autopilot. And as soon as we do that, the plane will target an 800 feet per minute vertical speed, and it will also start turning towards the plan we've set in the FMS. So the plane is fairly stable, there's not really any weirdness with it. Initially it does take a little bit of time to stabilize that climb speed to what you've set, but it does get there fairly quickly, and we climb at our stable 800 feet per minute. When we hit our top of climb, the plane goes from vertical speed mode into altitude hold mode, and at that point I'll set the flaps to 0, and that's it. We are pretty much in cruise. Again, the plane has no issues staying at our set altitude at a good speed with our throttle set and following our flight plan. So while we're here, there is one thing I want to do, which is set the nav radio to our destination ILS. So we'll set that. We'll make sure it's the active frequency, and we'll press enter. And we are all ready now for descent and approach. Just a quick explanation for anyone who is unfamiliar with the Garmin. So at the top you've got our next waypoint, distance to the waypoint, expected time to that waypoint, and obviously as you saw in the flight plan you can also zoom and pan the map. So we've now been given our descent, so we'll head to the autopilot panel. We will set our desired altitude, which is now 2,200 feet. We'll set vertical speed mode and set our desired vertical speed, which is about 500 feet per minute. We'll bring the throttles back, not completely to idle, but we'll bring the throttles back for descent, and the plane descends nicely at the speed we've set. At the bottom of descent, of course, the annunciator goes from vertical speed to altitude hold, and at this point we'll bring the throttles back up slightly just to hold the nose level. Because we're going to be slowing down fairly soon anyway, we're not going full throttle, we're just bringing it to a point where the nose stays level. As we turn onto our base leg, we want to get configured for approach, so we will slow down to a decent approach speed, and that's usually about sort of 50 to 65 knots in this plane. We'll also start applying our approach flaps, so that's 30 degrees of flaps, and we'll drop our landing gear. With the gear down, we just need to switch our nav mode into localizer mode, so it will follow the localizer instead of our flight plan, head up to the autopilot and press approach mode, so it will also start to follow the glide slope when we hit that, as well as the localizer. So as soon as we get to an altitude where we intercept the glide slope, the plane will switch into glide slope mode and it will descend quite nicely on the slope. You might have to manage the throttle a little bit to start with, but once you've got it stable, it follows the localizer and glide slope really well. So we are now on final approach to the airport, except we're not landing at the airport today. What we're going to do is raise the landing gear again, because we're going to attempt a water landing near the airport, because of course the Icon A5 can land on land and water. So you can see here we are in water landing mode with our gear up. We're now going to disengage the autopilot and try to maintain sort of a 5-degree descent as we turn towards the water here to our left. It's kind of hard to judge a water landing, especially in calm seas, because you can't really see it getting closer to you as you can with a runway. So just make sure your barometer is set correctly so you know when you're getting close to the ground. So we're going to pretty much do this as an instrument descent, and then when we get to 100 feet, I'm going to back off the throttle and try and glide down onto the water for what is hopefully a smooth landing. There we go, a successful water landing in the Icon A5. So there is not a lot to do once we land. We just have to turn on the water rudder so we can turn in the water, and that actually works really well. I'll say at this point that if you did like this video and find it useful, please drop a like, and if you'd like to see more, please subscribe, because I make this kind of content fairly regularly. So to kill our forward momentum, all we have to do is turn the aircraft off. And that concludes our flight in the Icon A5 Performance Edition with the Garmin G3X. Thank you so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.